1900 they said no, 1910, 11 they said no, 1920 they said no, 1930 an overwhelming majority, 200 to 50 essentially.
Yeah.
What happened?
Contraception has a very dark history that many people are not aware of. Right during that time period, there was a very big push among intellectuals and leaders to legalize contraception, 20s, 1930s. And contrary to what feminists would have us believe, that contraception was about freeing women, it had everything to do with population control and eugenics. For those unfamiliar with the eugenics movement, this was a very popular movement in the 20s and 30s that involved trying to breed a superior human race by weeding out the so-called inferior stock. Inferior stock would consist of minorities, mentally deficient people, people with low IQs, disabled, things like that. And there were very prominent people who supported this. One of them was Rockefeller. He was the biggest funder of the population control eugenics movement back in the early 20th century. He gave thousands of dollars to Margaret Sanger, who's the founder of Planned Parenthood.
Millions.
And he gave $410,000, which is today's equivalent of $4 million, to German researchers in Germany who eventually created the Nazi eugenics program. But back to Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League. The American Birth Control League, which people don't realize, worked hand in hand with the American Eugenics Society. In fact, they worked out of the same office, and they had people sitting on the board of the American Birth Control League. One of the most prominent ones is a man named Lothrop Stoddard. This man praised the Nazi racial policies. He met personally with Hitler, and his writings were published in Nazi school textbooks. This was a man who sat on the board of Margaret Sanger's American Birth Control League. Sanger also corresponded with a man named Ernst Rudin. Rudin was the architect of the Nazi Germany eugenics program. She not only did she correspond with him, she published his articles pushing eugenics in her birth control review. This is where contraception comes from, and this was the push that drove the legalization of contraception back in the 20s and 30s. We need to keep this in mind for those of us today, especially in the pro-life movement, who have no problem with contraception.
Yeah, the contraception is fine. And what has happened now, of course, is all of this, it got rid of the eugenics thing after World War II, obviously.
It gained a stigma after Nazi.
Yeah, it really did, which has now worked its way into the sort of American fabric of, jurisprudence and, just regular life. I mean, how many people today are just so, of course contraception's okay. So
be wondering, why are you talking about contraception? Shouldn't you be talking about abortion? I think you've done a good job in a lot of Vortex episodes in linking contraception to abortion, because the fact is, it's because contraception is the elephant in the living room when it comes to the big elephant in the living room when it comes to the pro-life movement. A lot of pro-lifers just don't want to touch this, which is why we are focusing on it. Because as long as you have contraception, you will always have abortion.
You have to have it. Just as well, it wasn't Kennedy. It was it Breyer, Stevens. I think it was Stevens who said in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, said Americans have gotten used to the idea that abortion is their backup for contraception.
Exactly.
When contraception fails.
That's exactly what it is.
The problem that you run into,
multi-billions of dollar industry. There's no way all of that contraception.
We need to address contraception.
I mean, the problem that you run into is you've got this thing, so it's, okay, so I'm going to go and have sex with a woman, and we're going to use contraception, so I don't want a baby. Oh, I end up with a baby.
Hormonal contraceptives also act as abortifacients. So women who are taking the pill, even women who are pro-life, or supposedly pro-life, but they don't have a problem taking the pill, what they don't realize is that pill is acting as an abortifacient sometimes, and you are having, on average, an abortion without your knowledge every 12 to 18 months. So a woman who's been on the pill for 20 years, she's had anywhere between 15 to 20 abortions. That means she's conceiving a child in her womb, and her child is being killed, her child, because she's taking this pill every day. And women, do you want that on your conscience?
That's a very good point. I want to go back to the cultural thing here. We have a few minutes left here. This has become part and parcel of the American landscape. It started with, it started back in Lambeth, but when it came over here to America, we had Nixon with his Title X funding. That's where the whole Let's Start Planned Parenthood. A Republican, to go back to an earlier point from an earlier show this week, to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, that article's up on the site for people to see.
Title X funding is the nation's only federal grant program that is promoted entirely to promoting contraception. And at the time that it was established, again, Nixon, it was Nixon who enacted this into law. It was Nixon who enacted the Commission on Population Growth, and guess who sat as the chair? Rockefeller.
Yeah.
Okay? But ostensibly, this was a program that was supposed to help poor people. To help the poor people get contraception. What people don't realize is Nixon was very much a population control eugenics advocate. There are secret recordings from the Oval Office where Nixon is caught talking about wanting to reduce the Negro population, calling them little black bastards. His words. So that was his goal in pushing this whole population control. Thanks to Nixon, Planned Parenthood now receives more than $500 million of taxpayer money each year. Thank you to Nixon.
Yeah. The eugenics movement, I wish people would, I mean, I don't want people to lose their entire lives researching it, but it is.
They can go and watch
Yeah.
the two different. We've done a Rockefeller CIA.
Yeah.
Rockefeller CIA and contraception deception. If
I wrote an article on it.
People want to know about that. They can invest, what, 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours?
It's a couple hours. You know,
Those
you can
things
get
have
it.
hundreds of hours of research.
Well,
in them.
I think the thing that people should do.
It's the modern day religion, is what I would.
There was mass dissent from the bishops all over the world. Mass dissent.
Winnipeg Statement. et
And
cetera,
we're
et cetera.
suffering from the fallout from that.
100%.
The faithful.
It is this is a tragedy. 60 million in America. We did a Vortex yesterday, I think it was, on the ghost numbers today. The ghost numbers of this, the children who weren't born, who never were conceived because their mothers were aborted in the womb. The actual numbers of people missing from the United States population is